You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts today are Carlos Casados, Satch Purcell, and myself, Oliver Altine. Now, a little while back, we did a live event with a local jazz band called RedShift. In this episode, we sit down with Dannie Hofmann and Stu Goodis from RedShift and get deep. We're going to talk about the intricacies of tone on the guitar and the saxophone. We're going to talk about the conflict between simplicity and complexity in music, and also music in different cultures. And of course, we're going to listen to some of RedShift's music. You can find their website at redshiftmusicworks.com.
Good evening, Carlos.
Good evening, Satch.
You know, I like company. I like plenty of company.
And usually there's three's company, but today there's a lot more than that.
Yeah, I know. We've got this is the most guests we've ever had on a show, I think, isn't it?
I think so.
The most guests we've ever had, yeah.
Unless you count the RedShift event that we did.
Ah, yeah, that's right. That's right. No, but we do have more in a way at one time because Oliver is joining us tonight.
That's true.
Our producer,
What's up,
Oliver.
guys? How you doing?
Yeah. Hey.
Good evening, Oliver.
Good evening, Carlos.
All right. So we're here with RedShift. And we did an event with them, and that was a lot of fun. That was really interesting. It was intriguing. And now we're really doing an actual sit-down where we can just take our time and get to know these guys. Get to know Stu a little better. And we know Dannie pretty darn well. But it's cool that Oliver's joining in because, you know, we get to have a musician to help us out a little bit.
Well, when you guys interviewed the guys, the guy and gal from Incendio Band, I was sitting over there just chomping at the bit because I was like, I don't have a microphone and I want to talk about music. So
yeah,
thanks for letting me. Dannie Hofmann and Stu Goodis, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. So you guys have a band called RedShift, which I used to be a member of.
Yes.
And am no longer a member of. And Stu has filled my shoes marvelously.
Thank you.
Let me just ask you, Stu, did it feel like you were joining someone else's band, or did you make it your own as soon as you stepped in, or how did that transition work for you?
A little bit of both. It did definitely feel like I was following what was going on, something preconceived. And it took a few months to transition toward something that felt more like I had a controlling drive, let's say. Right,
because you definitely have a different sound than I do. You're a very different guitar player than me.
Agreed. There's some overlap, certainly, for sure. Yeah, I think I'm coming from maybe a stronger jazz side, and your style might be a little more funk and blues.
Yeah. I'm maybe a little more rough around the edges than you are. Because when I listen to you play, man, you've got this beautiful, round, warm, really, it seems like you've really put a lot of work into refining your tone, your guitar sound.
I'd say so. Yeah, that's a big part of it.
So what do you use? How do you get that beautiful, warm, amazing sound?
Yeah, the instrument, choice of the design on the instrument. So the guitar I'm using now I had built for me. And I strung it a little heavier than it's a solid body guitar. Generally, people string them a little lighter, so I went a little heavier. And the technique of how I strike the string is part of it too. I think if I played a variety of guitars, I would probably make them all sound like my guitar. Right. I would hope.
So I have a question for the not so musician here. What does that mean to string it heavier to string it light? What's that?
Right. So electric solid guitars that are not acoustic are usually strung with very thin strings.
Okay.
So you could play fast or shred, as they say.
Okay.
Whereas acoustic guitars and hollow body jazz guitars, big jazz box, are strung with heavy strings, thick strings, higher tension, thicker, rounder tone. So I had always played those heavier guitars up until a few years ago. And when I switched over to solid electric guitars, I retained a little bit of the heavier string.
Cool.
Yeah. So the tone that the voice that I hear myself in is a rounder, full, warm sound. So even though I'm playing a guitar that's traditionally played edgier and sharp sounding, I do try to get that warmer, round tone.
Okay.
You also have this this awesome setup the stereo effect thing, and that your guitar actually
Right.
produces stereo sound right from the beginning, and you use these two amps, and it's just really like what Oliver was saying, gives you this glassy and very clear and sound, and then the way you manipulate it is just really nice.
The stereo is important because I want that width and the depth. If you don't have stereo, then you can get the depth from the reverb, but you can't get a wide sound.
Oh, okay.
So stereo just kind of gives a bigger space.
I see. Well, that's what it sounds like, and when we play together, I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Danny, kind of curious about your take on what was that like to be playing with Oliver, and then Oliver was no longer part of the band, and then Stu came in. So how was that transition for you?
Well,
It's okay. You can be.
I was
honest.
heartbroken.
Fair enough.
It was a transition that I wasn't expecting really.
Uh-huh.
But you got to go with what comes at you, and it was awesome playing with Oliver, and now I'm just super happy that our bass player Martin, who couldn't join us tonight, invited Stu, and when we started playing, I really, I thought this was gonna be really cool too.
Well, I think
different
it's a great thing that you guys didn't need a divorce attorney, and you could arbitrate, and now you're happy again.
Right.
Yeah, no, and I mean, to me, that's to get upset about stuff like that is
Yeah.
it's not-
And just to
doesn't-
be clear, I didn't leave for any personal reasons. We didn't have a fight or anything.
Come on, Oliver. I'm trying to kind of I'm trying to insinuate
create some drama.
some drama in here.
I left because I wanted to have time to just do composing and kind of do my own thing.
and do the authenticity show.
Actually,
and started a podcast. It was a hard decision to leave because I love playing with Danny.
yeah.
But I sort of feel like
we
Stu.
have
I kind of feel like you're the perfect guitarist for this band anyway. I when I listen to you guys play, it's like it just seems so right.
Yeah, there's a real compatibility. It was immediately recognizable with Danny, and I knew Martin before that. He and I have been playing together for 25 years, so that helped quite a bit. Stepping into that.
In fact, you and Martin used to play at a coffee shop that I worked at a long time ago, right?
I remember.
At Renaissance Coffee, which is now a Starbucks.
Of course.
Yes.
All
The coffee and
shops.
music connection.
That was cool though. We had live music 7 nights a week at that coffee shop. For
Yeah,
a long time.
that was pretty cool.
And
I remember when you worked there.
I remember going in there all the time. Me and Tanya, you wouldn't back
Yeah.
when we were dating. We used to go there all the time and get like hot chocolate at night. And
Yeah.
Oliver would quite frequently make my hot chocolate. You did a really good job. So tonight you gave me bubbly water, but you used to give me hot chocolates on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel any loss of love from the lack of chocolate?
Well, like Danny, I was disappointed. When Oliver was no longer at Renaissance Cafe.
Yeah, were you
But-
heartbroken? That was the question.
Yeah, I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
But you
you
learn
moved on, didn't you?
Yeah, you move on.
Yeah.
You put it in the past. It scars over.
Totally.
Yeah, so I can talk about it now.
I feel your pain, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, but cool. Well, what I'm hoping, and every once in a while when you guys say something about like your playing style or something, I'm going to ask, is there a song that reflects that? So like just a little bit ago, we were talking about, what it is that makes Stu's sound, the way it comes out. And is there a song that, you really think showcases that is showing really what you're talking about?
Yeah, we just finished the track for Whiskey Tango. That would be a good example.
Okay, Whiskey Tango. Let's give it a listen.
Yeah, let's do it.
I loved it. That was awesome. You know,
Yeah,
it's
that's
kinda,
great.
It's sort of soft and crisp at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the only way I know how to describe it.
Yeah.
Soft and crisp. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, the songs evolve, and in fact, that song started out as a tango, and we played it, and we knew something wasn't quite exactly done, so it became a reggae, as it turned out. So I had to come up with a new title for it, so I decided to call it Whiskey Tango.
It's sort of mischievous sounding.
That's
I was
cool.
talking
Yeah.
with Danny about how I was imagining wandering around back alley streets and drinking whiskey, that kind of thing.
So
Makes
what
sense.
what is the difference between tango and reggae? I mean, they're two totally different styles, but they're related, I guess.
Right, they're related in that they're not jazz swing. So that's probably the most strong relationship that they have.
Right. So they fall into the category of Latin.
Of
right?
Latin, and they have an even rhythm to them,
Right.
unlike swing, which is uneven.
Right. Is there a standard chord progression that's happening here?
It's a minor key. There's nothing in there that I'd say is really out of the ordinary. It's a little asymmetrical, so meaning some of the phrases they go a little long. So you might expect the melody to come back around, but there's a few more bars. So that
Right.
was part of the composition.
Nice. And so this is unreleased, right?
That's correct.
Is there a release date for this new album?
We're hoping by the end of the year, I think.
So, what about you, Danny? You play the saxophone, lots of different saxophones, and
I do.
other things too, right?
Not many other things. No, I wouldn't say it. I mean, I dabble around with other instruments, but really, the only one I would claim to play in any mildly proficient way would be the saxophone. Yeah,
Saxophone is all you'll admit to right now.
pretty much.
On the
I mean,
record.
I like a lot of instruments. I picked up the flute 10 years ago, so I guess I could say I play a little bit of flute. I know we've done some recordings together.
Yeah,
We
you
have
played
play
on
the
my
flute.
last album. I love your flute playing. I mean,
yeah, me too.
saxophone
I'm glad you
is
admitted
your
that.
thing, though. Yeah.
I was going to have to whip out the polygraph.
Oh yeah.
In
I mean,
any
10
moment
years.
now.
That's 10 years. That's a long-term, instrument on the side. It's
Yeah, it is. It is.
So with your saxophone playing, how do you think about your sound? Where does your approach to your sonic kind of palette come from? Do you have like players that you try to emulate, or is it just all your own thing, or where does that come from?
Well, there's things that that I really like, and sounds that I really like. Obviously, John Coltrane is the biggest name that
Obviously.
people. Well, I'm just saying that because
I know.
I know a
love
lot
John
of people
Coltrane.
may not be familiar with him, but he
Yeah.
probably is one of the most familiar jazz musicians, in the world. So
Right. Well, and some
so it
saxophone,
wouldn't surprise any saxophone players if I said that.
Yeah,
like John
right.
Coltrane.
Right.
but from my perspective, it's not uncommon to hear people say they're not crazy about Coltrane's tone, though. Even though I am a fan. But
Yeah, true.
I mean, his tone is a little bit
I've heard people say that.
it's a little sharp, right? I mean, not sharp as
I
in
think
like out of
you know,
tune,
you-
but like
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it depends on what era you're thinking of too, because, I mean, he kind of changed his tone when he started playing more avant-garde and free. And he opened up his overtones on the saxophone. And one of the beautiful things on the saxophone to me is that it's kind of like a voice. If you really allow it, you can fill the tone with a lot of overtones. You can also like narrow it down and make it more like a classical tone. Although I think that's one of the reasons that classical musicians never really took that much to the saxophone, is because it's hard to narrow it down even, to the extent that they like it, like on a clarinet or a flute.
yeah, there's not a lot of saxophone concertos out there.
No. Yeah. There's quite a few classical saxophone players that I've come across, so it is definitely a thing. But that's, to me, is the beauty of the saxophone, is that you can control, your sound with your embouchure and your throat. But I like, if there was probably one other person that I really emulate would be Archie Shepp, who was a guy who played with Coltrane in the later days when they were going really avant-garde and free jazz, and from that really powerful free playing, he developed a sound that's really unlike anybody else. So then when you heard him playing more conventional things, and tunes and melodies and so on, it's just such a rich sound.
Danny, it's interesting to somebody who's maybe not familiar with blowing into an instrument, right? You just look at a saxophone or a flute or some kind of horn, and you just think, wow, you blow into it and the sound comes out the way it comes out. Yet you're talking about how there's so much that you, the player, do, like within your body, that changes the sound.
You mentioned the embouchure.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about what that means, maybe for people who aren't familiar with
overtones,
with that sort of thing? Yeah, I was going to ask about overtones too. Yeah.
The embouchure is basically the way you hold your mouth, your jaw, and lips and everything in order to produce a sound on any wind instrument. So, you shape your mouth in a certain way in order to get the sound, and then you can manipulate that. And beyond that, what I've come to learn is that, when you're playing a wind instrument, you're not just playing the instrument, because the sound reverberates in your body. So your body becomes its own sound chamber, in a sense.
Okay.
And you have this. So what I now look to achieve is like this feeling of my body being intimately connected to the horn and creating one sound. And that's why every horn player sounds a little bit different. At least if they've worked on it a little bit.
So you're the other. So you're like, it's almost like the saxophone's blowing into you in a way. I mean, like, but at least like in terms of vibration.
Yeah, because it's like kind of like singing, except in singing you don't have the instrument.
Yeah,
but you have your whole. Yeah, everything's vibrating.
You guys better stop all this talk about blowing into each other.
I know. I was thinking that. I was choosing my words carefully.
Yeah, it's in the intimate relationship with your instrument, and
I know.
Saxophone is very intimate.
Yeah.
Right.
Can get pretty gross too.
I'll bet. Yeah.
In fact,
At least you're not like a brass player who empties like the spit valve onto the orchestra floor,
Yeah, that's with us it just collects in the bell, and then now we have to pour it out.
You pour it out. Wow. Oh boy. Well, I, as you're describing that, I get the image of a tree. And we only see the top of the tree, right? Yet there's the whole root system under the ground. There's a whole other side of the tree. It's more like a dumbbell.
It's a real good metaphor, yeah.
So
that.
Yeah, you're like the roots underneath, the sax.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow. Like Carlos had asked about overtones. Could you, like, if somebody is unfamiliar with what that is or what that sounds like, how would somebody listen for that? What would they hear?
Overtones are basically anytime you have a sound, there are notes that are singing above that basic tone that you're hearing.
So basically the idea is you've got like suppose you have a low tone, and if you listen carefully there's also a high tone hiding in there. Because I've heard overtone singers.
Yeah,
it just blows my mind. It's beautiful.
I always thought a good analogy for overtones living inside one single note is white light. White light is refracted. There's all the colors are inside the light,
right?
But you just see it as one color, just like a note has all these other notes living inside it, even though you might just notice the one note. But all the different overtones combine to create the particular sound of whatever instrument you're hearing.
Right.
That's neat. I was actually thinking of a visual metaphor as well, but I was thinking of like a pool of water with the light reflecting off of it just right, so you could really see the ripples. And when those ripples bounce against each other, they overlap and create new shapes and forms. And when that becomes a consistent, tangible, discernible shape, that's like an overtone.
That's pretty much what it is. Yeah. It's
beautiful.
a good visual representation.
So on a guitar, so like if you hit the low E, does the high E vibrate a little bit? I mean, would that be kind of a similar kind of concept?
That's actually called sympathetic vibrations.
Oh, sympathetic vibration.
So
okay.
it will begin to vibrate the other strings just because they're attached to the same instrument.
Yeah.
But the idea of overtones exists on any anything that generates sound has overtones. Goes back to Pythagoras, figured all that stuff out, and that's how we know what all of our common system of notes are, because he heard these tones.
Oh, okay.
But on a guitar, you can demonstrate it by dividing the string. If you find the exact halfway point of the string, and then you slightly just touch that part of the string, and then you strike the note, you'll hear the first overtone isolated by itself.
Okay.
And then as you divide the string in half again, you then get the next overtone, and it's called the overtone series, and it just keeps going up and up.
And this is commonly known as playing harmonics on the guitar.
And they're called harmonics.
Yeah, harmonics,
So it's the
okay.
harmonic series is another term that's used.
Cool.
Isn't it amazing how anything you get into becomes so interesting and complex the deeper you get into it, you know?
Sure.
Even
Yeah.
something that seems so simple has such a complexity and richness to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that's so true of so many topics. I mean, we have sympathetic resonance, isn't that frequency, right? Sympathetic
Yeah,
frequency.
sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
human beings, all of us
Yeah.
are, in this room have some sympathetic frequencies that we
Yeah.
hit in our conversations. And
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have this intuition that truth is simple, reality is somehow simple fundamentally, but I think reality is complex.
Sure.
Indeed.
There's a
I
whole
would
lot
agree.
of it. Yeah, there's a whole lot of it, Well,
I was reading an interesting book. Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. Yeah.
Where the author states that intelligence is the ability to make finer distinctions.
I love that. And for me, understanding sometimes comes from finding sameness and sometimes from difference, like a contrast. And so when I hear that, I resonate with that completely, to use a musical metaphor. But also, I think of Einstein's idea of intelligence being related to, being able to explain something simply, like to simplify a complex idea. Like, could you explain this to a 5-year-old? So both of those things seem true. They both seem to have value. But in particular, when you think about them together, like those two ideas, you get a bigger, broader picture of what's possible for intelligence in a way.
Yeah,
not that
Carlos,
that's it, but
we were just resonating right now.
Oh, yeah. You were thinking something similar?
Yeah, because like Danny, like what you just said, it's a finer distinction of difference, right? Yet also intelligence is zooming out higher and seeing grosser levels of distinction too.
Yeah.
Like it's like wherever you're at, you got to be able to go up or down the scale, so to speak. And
Right.
and see either finer, smaller, or larger.
Well, isn't Stu and Danny? Isn't it true that like with musical tastes, sometimes people they have a tendency to like things that are simpler, and some people like things that are very complex when it comes to music. So
There is a challenge that exists, and that's the conflict between, from a performing standpoint or musician's standpoint, the conflict between simple and complex. Because in your the time you spend to develop your craft, can be very complex. But the goal is to be performing where it feels very simple. And that conflict of those two things, that's always, going on.
Like the flow states that Danny and I were working with recently in a class that we both took. There's the state of performance, a high performance state, and there's a state where you might be practicing and refining, and those are totally different. They're not meant to be the same, but sometimes people confuse the two. But they're really one does involve a simplicity and a performance mode when you're really just doing it. You're hearing the music. You're not inside your head going, "Oh, this next part's difficult or tricky. I better prepare." You're not doing any of that nonsense.
Exactly.
But when you're practicing, trying to improve yourself, maybe you might be doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's you have to spend that, let's say, 10,000 hours of all that hard work to get to that moment where you're not thinking about any of it.
No mind.
I think there's a couple of issues that relate to that. Over the years, I've thought about how different musics developed in different areas of the world. In the African continent, the emphasis was on rhythms and polyrhythms. In the Middle East, you find a lot of multi-rhythms. And then in Indian music, you have a lot of drones, and you have the very, very fine distinctions between notes that are way finer than what we are used to in Western music. each area of the world where these cultures evolved, they took the time to develop those aspects of the music and really, really delve into the details of them. So, but then, for somebody outside of that to come to that music, they won't understand it. And they may not even sound like music to them. I mean, if I think for a lot of Western and European people to listen to an African drum ensemble, they wouldn't understand what's going on at all.
Yeah. It sounds messy or
something.
something.
It just sounds like a mess.
Yeah.
Or, if they listen to Indian music, they'll hear the drone and they'll be like, oh, well, that, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. Because it's just, because we're used to harmonic movement or something like that. And so, and in Western music, we really focused on harmonic development and the melodies that associate with that harmonic movement, but we really kind of neglected the rhythmic aspect of music. And
Right.
so
In Western classical music, you mean?
yeah, in Western classical music in
for sure.
particular, yeah. I'm talking about the sort of classical art forms, like in these different cultures. It's,
Right, yeah.
Music is something that has to be taught. And you have to learn to listen to it. And I think that's what all these cultures, all our differences prove, is that it takes time to learn to listen to jazz or to learn
really
to listen
does.
to classical music. And sometimes you have to be told, here, listen to this, check that, you notice that?
Yeah.
Right? And that's where I think you move into the art of music, whereas, music has a lot of other functions too, entertainment, dance. And if you want to reach a larger audience, you're going to make it simpler. So in my mind, the simplest syncopation is the backbeat. Right?
Techno.
It's technically, yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Yeah, I got that down, the simple stuff. Yeah.
But that is basically our first syncopation. If we don't do that, then we're just doing our classical marches. So from there, if you want to do your first syncopation out of that, it'll go be off the beat like that, and you add that in, and then you're off into a whole different rhythmic world.
Yeah. I remember when I first started learning how to play jazz, I went to school for classical guitar.
Right.
I got my master's degree in classical. But when I started playing jazz, somebody told me, set your metronome for beats 2 and 4. And I was like, really? The metronome on 2 and 4? And it was hard at first. I was like, shit, that's like... I was getting all kinds of messed up, But if you put the metronome on 2 and 4, so there's not a click on beat 1, it just feels different. It's like kind of a cool thing that happens.
What does that sound like? Like 2 and 4?
It's
Well, if there's
it's
4
like
beats,
this 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
Oh, okay.
It's rooted
Basically
in
what you were
swing
doing slower.
music. So in
Okay.
the 20s and 30s, when that style kind of took hold, that became very normal. Later, it just became the snare drum on a rock beat.
That's
So
2 and
that-
4, right?
And that's the backbeat.
So what you're talking about as the backbeat is kind of like the backbone of music for the last 60 years or so.
Sure.
You're listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts Carlos Casados, Satch Purcell, and Oliver Alteen. Up next, we continue our conversation with Dannie Hofmann and Stu Goodis from the band RedShift. You can find their website at redshiftmusicworks.com. We'll talk a little bit more about the songwriting process, including some great musical examples, also how to fool restaurant owners, and the evolution of music and the origins of jazz.
I want to mention something. I think it was when we did the show with Incendio, and I think it was JP from Incendio that said this. When there's a singer, that the show's more about the musicians and the singer, but when it's instrumental, really it's more about the audience. And that really struck me when he shared that, and because you guys are an instrumental band, right?
Yeah,
and so I don't know. Do you has that been your experience that because you do music without vocals, is it also more about the audience? I don't know, or is that different for your kind of music?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What's that experience for you?
I think it's more about the interaction within the group.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
Because if there's no singer in the middle, then it kind of levels the playing field. So now each instrument has a stronger voice and a potential voice to be that front voice at different times.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
But there is a piece of music that you reminded me of by John Cage called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And the music is completely silent. And it would be performed. A pianist would step up to a piano and actually place music on the piano and do nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And the point of the piece is that the audience is the piece. The sounds and the breathing and people clearing throats and things like that.
Wow.
Interesting.
Okay.
It's very Dada.
I love that. I seriously considered doing a guitar transcription of that piece for my
Very
recital
nice.
when I was
Okay.
at Cal State Fullerton.
Sure. I'm sure they would have appreciated it.
I didn't have the balls to do it though.
Yeah, I don't think it would have went over very well.
Have you ever performed that piece?
No.
I perform it all the time.
So for you guys, because I mean you're professionals, you've done this a long time. When you're putting your songs together, like I just hear you and think, oh, just it just sounds good. You just get together and you can do it. But I mean, do you really hit the wall sometimes? I mean, like how hard do you have to work sometimes to pull something off?
It varies. Some things. Well, we each will compose a piece, so the beginning elements of it are already in place, and then we'll bring it into a rehearsal situation. And sometimes it's just automatic; it happens immediately.
Okay, so go either way.
It's very intuitive, and there are other times when it may be a struggle, and then just can it. So it varies.
Are there any pieces that you can think of that were a struggle and you got through it and created something really nice?
Well, there was a piece that we did that we actually recorded on our first CD called Forward. And it's the first piece that I wrote for this band.
Okay.
Okay.
Particular
Just
challenge.
after I replaced Oliver. The very first piece.
Okay.
And it had two sections. It had a very slow section and a faster section. And it took about a year, even after we recorded it, it took about a year for me to realize that the first section was far better than the second section. So
okay.
I got rid of the second section entirely and composed more of what the first section evoked.
Ooh.
And so now we have a
wow.
new composition, as I see it, and that's called Forward Vision.
Forward Vision, as
Wow.
opposed to the original, which was Forward.
Correct.
Wow, very
Great.
cool.
That's really great.
Yeah, that's neat.
It's not the first song he's done that with.
this is a trend, huh? Yeah, cool.
Should we give it a listen?
I'd like to hear it.
Yeah.
So let's
Sure.
listen to Forward, the first recording that you were talking about. So that was the first version you recorded.
That was the first version of Forward.
Right. And so there's some very different, like the first part was slow and sort of slinky or what, I don't know how you call it.
Right. So the concept was to create a kind of a journey. That's what the song was supposed to be. It, had a certain mood in the beginning that led into another mood.
But you just didn't like where it led.
The second part didn't sound worthy of being attached to the first part.
All right. But you have since rectified this error.
I fixed it.
Okay, so can we hear the new version?
We certainly can.
All right, here we go.
And that was such a great example for me of simplicity and complexity in the same song. For me, listening, just maybe it's just my perspective or whatever, but it had that surprise and it had the expectation. I found my head kind of and my body tracking the rhythms in unexpected ways. Like I didn't expect my body to suddenly move in the way it did. So there was like an unconscious part of me that was following and really enjoying it. And then other parts of me that would find myself grinning and smiling because I don't know if I expected it or didn't expect it, but it tickled me in some interesting way.
That's part of my process of composing. There's a certain amount of, I'll say equal amounts of surprise and expectation that I'm, playing on the listener.
Do you actually, when you're composing, actually say, now what would everybody expect to happen next and what could I do instead?
To a degree,
Yeah?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was sort of lulled into thinking that was a nice, slow song, but it wasn't slow. There's a lot of speed there too.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure if it was slow or fast.
Sneaky speed.
There's rhythm within the rhythm would be a way to look at it. Drummers call it subdividing. You have, the meter, which is the basic beat, and then you have divisions within that you can use to take something that's slow and make it sound like it has a little more energy.
The slow blade penetrates.
Sort of reminds me of tabla playing, right? Because there's a lot of speed and little flutters and flourishing moments, but it's all contained within this ongoing beat.
Yeah, the mood of a piece isn't only created by the tempo; it's created by all the things around it too. So sometimes we talk about club owners, or they as soon as they hear a backbeat, they think if it's too loud, like in a restaurant setting or in a dinner setting or something, Whereas you could play, 3 times as fast, but don't give them that backbeat. And then they'll be like, oh, that was really mellow, but we just went 300 or something.
Wow! So that's an actual technique that you use to fool restaurant owners.
You can,
if
you're aware of it.
Very sneaky guys.
Very
Very sneaky.
Yeah. Now, are there any songs that you've done that you feel is pushing the boundaries of what you define yourself as?
Or maybe I should ask, what do you guys define yourselves as?
Oh, yeah.
Well, on our, like I said, on our web page and Facebook page, I think I describe it as avant-funk, jazz. I mean, my intention to some degree is to bring more people than just the jazz audience. See, one of the nice things about working with a band all the time and so on is that music evolves. So, what we put on a CD is like literally a record of what happened at that moment in time, where we were at as people, as musicians, as a band. And then, we go back and we think about things and we listen to things again, and then, things change. So
we're not going to go to a RedShift concert and say they played it exactly like the album.
I don't think we can.
Yeah.
That would be harder to do.
I mean, I part of my vision for doing this band is really to promote live music and show why live music is different.
I think it's just also the result of the fact that 3 composers, we write very differently.
Yeah, that's very true too.
It could be 3 different bands easily. Each of us could branch off and have 3 completely different groups, but it does come together. I mean, if you're hearing a set and you catch 8 songs, they could be dramatically different from one another.
And that's because it'll feature the 3 of you and different compositions from you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's also we try not to put boundaries around how we think about the arrangements. A song may be reggae, like Whiskey Tango, or we could do a tune that's very spacey and very open sounding, or one could be a straight blues funk. We try not to think of it as a particular type of band. We just have ideas, and we all know, our capability.
But with so many different stylistic influences coming together, like you're talking about, Is this kind of the new normal? Are you guys an outlier as far as that, or is this just a result of the internet and the world getting smaller and all that kind of stuff?
I'd say that's true. Yeah, I think that jazz is not one thing, and maybe never has been, but even to more of a degree now, I think it's spread out.
Because like in the 70s when we had this, what was called then the jazz fusion,
right?
That was like a thing, right? Jazz and rock together, like,
sure.
Wow. But like everything is fusion ultimately, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. And I think the idea of world music, which is even broader, creeped into jazz, more maybe in the 80s and in the 90s, and it got even more diverse.
Yeah. I mean, jazz even started as a type of fusion, right? Jazz was, Black American music that, different cultures colliding, and
sure.
The birth of jazz is this fusion of different cultures, right?
It is. I think it's important to give credit where it's due as to the origins of jazz, because it is, it started out as an African American music, and it started out as a African American fusion of African influences and heritage, and in particular French sort of from New Orleans, the South influences.
Yeah. So New Orleans is considered the birthplace of jazz, yeah?
I think so, yeah. I mean, that's sort of traditionally
that's what I've understood.
It's not what the Utah Jazz basketball team would say, though.
No.
Right? Because I think they moved from
Utah was not the birthplace of jazz.
I don't know how they ever got to call got their name. That always boggles my mind.
I know. Well, they moved.
How did they come?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they moved.
Did they?
They moved to Utah. Well, like the Lakers were in Michigan, and they moved to L.A., and they're still the Lakers. Right. We only have tar pits.
And it had its origins in a time when, it was hard for musicians, especially the black musicians, to get instruments, first of all, and then to get written music. So it really was carried on as an oral tradition for a long time. It kind of started more as an entertainment thing, and then evolved into more of an art form, and I think that happened especially with the beginning of bebop in the 40s, maybe late 30s, early 40s, where the jazz musicians, especially the black jazz musicians, were taking the music to a whole different level as far as the skill and the complexity of it, and we're rightfully claiming that this music was just as serious as classical music.
Right. Have you guys read Miles Davis's autobiography?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He talks about he was attending Juilliard.
Yeah.
During the day, right? And then at night he was playing with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, and he was learning more from Charlie Parker in one night of playing than in like a whole semester of studying at Juilliard, at least, according to what I understood from his autobiography. Yeah. But like how, there's no real choice there. Of course you're going to go with what's happening live and like evolving in front of you instead of the stale like classroom stuff,
Yeah.
But, his, academic studies I'm sure influenced especially his later compositional career. Anyway, if you haven't read Miles's autobiography, or to get the audiobook version, it's really interesting. Miles actually reads it. So
that's right. That's what
I remember when I was first listening to it. This is kind of an aside, but I was like, man, the guy that's reading this book has kind of got a bad voice. It's sort of raspy and like, oh, that's actually Miles Davis reading it. Okay.
It's funny. Wow. Well, they call it inspiration. You know what I mean? It's so he's there. He was inspired, from the inside. We call it expiration, right? I mean, we could, but it'd be weird, right?
Oh, I see. That's inspired from the inside. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's just that idea. So he's in school where he's getting it all from the exterior. He's with these amazing guys that are inspiring him. So it makes sense. Yeah.
So if someone was an Orange County resident and they wanted to see a RedShift show, where would they go and when?
We have a monthly show at the Blue Beat Cafe in Newport Beach every last Wednesday of the month at this point for the last 2 or 3 years now, I think.
Yeah.
And
down by the Newport Pier, right?
Yeah. By the Newport Pier.
The Blue Beat. Cool
the
place.
Blue Beat is like the oldest watering hole in Newport Beach, I think. Yeah,
Kind of
maybe
classic
even
place.
Orange County. It's 100 and something years old under the same name. So
Yeah,
we got
and
some cool old posters up there.
a while back you played at Le Cave.
And we played at La Cave. We'll see when we get our next gig there.
It's kind of an
And then-
iconic place too.
It is that was another old club that's been around for a long time in Costa Mesa. That was cool. And then we have now and then we play at the Boathouse in Costa Mesa. That's kind of a newer, younger crowd, but they really dig what we're doing too.
There's some hipster stuff
Yeah.
going on there too.
Yeah,
Good food at the Boathouse too.
they do have good food. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And then we've been doing a Sunday afternoon gig for a few times now for a couple of months at a winery here. And we do that as a trio actually.
What's it called?
The OC Winery, the Orange Coast Winery. It's on 16th Street there in Newport, Costa Mesa.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun too. So
How can people hear your music?
they can go to our website, redshiftmusicworks.com, and they can get our CD there. They can order it there. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. Same thing, Redshift Music Works.
Well, there's two other band members, Tyler,
Tyler Walton on drums,
yeah, and Martin.
and Martin Torres on bass.
So they couldn't be here. Any message on their behalf that you wanna go ahead and shoot out?
Martin is very much of an intellectual, so he would have really enjoyed this. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was disappointed when I heard we couldn't make it because Martin's a good guy. I like him.
yeah,
Yeah, me too. I was
very expressive.
because he always has a good take on things.
Yeah. Well, you'll
Different
hear
thing.
it in his music.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great that your drummer has not spontaneously combusted too.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
That's
a pretty.
always nice.
that happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Although he's been on the verge a few times.
Yeah.
You always carry a fire extinguisher
I don't know what it is
in
about
the
drummers.
equipment, right?
Yeah.
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 Well, this has been really great, and
Yeah.
Oliver, it's been nice to interview with you
Yeah.
Yeah.
instead
It
of
was
you
cool.
behind the box.
Definitely, definitely. You made our job a lot easier. I'll tell you that. Yeah. So, final question: as fans of your own band, do you have a favorite song to take us home?
I like the way that the CD ends.
Okay.
It ends with a song that I wrote called High Fog.
High Fog. I
Yeah.
played that song with you.
You did play
Yeah.
that song with me, yeah.
It's a major blues, right?
It's a major blues, and it's very simple, but it's just an uplifting blues, yeah.
Well, that would be nice because you both, guitarists, Stu and Oliver, since you've both played this, it'd be kind of a nice, harmonious thing to take us home with.
Sure.
What do you say we listen to it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
It's High Fog out of here.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados, Satch Purcell, and Oliver Altine. Very special thanks to our guests today, Dannie Hofmann and Stu Goodis from RedShift. You can catch them the last Wednesday of every month at the Blue Beat in Newport Beach and at various other places around Southern California. You can find their website at redshiftmusicworks.com. This show is produced by Oliver Altine. That's me. Our theme music is composed by Oliver Altine. That's me too. Although, of course, the music we're listening to right now was composed by Dannie Hofmann of RedShift. Make sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on Spotify now. Yay! And of course, find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the things. You know how that works. And check out our website, authenticityshow.com. Thanks for listening, and have an authentic day.